Minds on Muscle community, welcome to the Fitness Pro Mentors interview series. If you want to hear some amazing interviews from amazing fitness professionals all over the world, please join our Fitness Pro Mentors private Facebook group. But today, let's make it rain. Hello, everyone. This is Brandon from Fitness Pro Mentors, and today we're here with another awesome podcast episode, and we are with the infamous and very powerful Mr. Jason. Stella, Jason, how you doing, man?
I'm good. The infamous El Guapo.
That's right, man. That's right.
Three Amigos reference.
So I'm really excited for Jason because, as you know, we like to interview exercise titans, people of all levels in the industry. And we've had a lot of amazing, I'd say, science-y, academic-y people on. But one thing that we're really biased here is to try and teach you as much about having a business and being a successful fit pro. And Jason, I mean, why I'm excited to have you is you've been doing this for a while. You've been kicking butt for a while, and you've been influencing fit pros for a while. So do you mind telling people a little bit about who you are and your origin story?
Yeah, for sure, man. I started as an athletic trainer, actually, even before college. I got a job. I was playing small college basketball, and wanted to get a job at a club that had a health club or that had a basketball court. And I actually went to Bally. I was a stone's throw from Bally Total Fitness headquarters when I grew up in Chicago. So I went in as a sophomore, I think it was sophomore, junior in high school, and just said, hey, I'd love to get a job on the floor, cleaning or whatever. And they're like, hey, man, why don't you become a trainer? And I'm like, what? And they're like, yeah, why don't you become a trainer? I'm like, I'm a sophomore in high school. Like, yeah, we'll just take this test and, we'll get you out on the floor. And I'm like, oh my God, this is terrible. Even I had that like mentality in my head back then. And this was like, God, it was like 1990. And so I'm like, I don't want anything to do with big health clubs, nothing. And so I found an individual store it was a big health club, but it was a single owned for the town, and they had basketball courts and everything. And long story short, the NASM, when they were based out of Chicago, when Tom Purvis was with them and John Bolivernich and Goldman, I believe, and Neil Spruce, all these guys that had started NASM, which a lot of people don't know, they were the originators. Bob Goldman, I think, was the main guy. And they were using this facility as a host for their certification that they created. And back then it was a 7-day intensive where you were doing classroom work and then you had hands-on work, and then you got tested out both on the written and the hands-on, and then you got your certification. And so I did that and got, the shit scared out of me, honestly, through Tom and everybody else. And they were all bodybuilders back then. And so that was kind of my introduction. So I did get certified before I even finished high school. And then when I got it, actually, I take that back. By the time I went through it, it was my freshman year in college. And then, did that and really wanted to be an athletic trainer. Long story short, through college, my senior year, I was football athletic trainer, and I was first to respond to a compound fracture, tib fib. And I'm like, no, don't want that. Don't want any part of it. So I got into, strength and conditioning and did that whole thing. And then kind of fast forward, one of the guys that was the trainer at that real nice health club that I was at, the single owned, he and I ran into each other at a bar, and he said, hey, we're going to be opening up a studio. Would you mind, would you want to work? And I'm like, sure. I've been looking. I was working as a trainer part-time, and then working at the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, being an arbitrage clerk, throwing signals out. And long story short, that guy was a guy that was in Paul Chek's. He had followed Tom very, very closely, and then kind of shifted and got into Paul Chek's work, and was actually in several of his correspondence courses that he had created early on. So I kind of got influenced going through that and started following Paul. And then I still remember the day when my buddy Tony basically said, hey, Tom Purvis is following this guy and learning this stuff from this guy. And I'm like, really? Like, well, what is it? It's called muscle activation technique. And he said, and I'm like, oh my God, so long story short, I got influenced then, and then I was in the 5th internship that Greg had ever done. And then I started, and at that point in time, now I had left the studio and in-home stuff, and, never thought that I would be at Lifetime more than a year, maybe a year and a half, get a bunch of clients, leave and start my own business, as everybody's dream is. And long story short, here I am now 18 years later. I was with them for 14 years. moved from Chicago to Minnesota, the corporate office, was director of education, created the Alpha training program there, and then got recruited from a friend of mine to go to 24-hour fitness, and was the vice president of fitness for 24-hour for a year. Then left there, went to another smaller but nicer club chain. They were going to get bought out, came back to Lifetime. And, basically I've been now back with them for about 4.5 years. So almost going on 19 years.
That's
So
amazing, man.
yeah. And a lot of other education in between, I never actually went to see Tom in Oklahoma, but I went through all the other stuff, 1, 2, 3, and went through all of a lot of Czech stuff, a lot of Poliquin stuff, a lot of obviously MAT. And then, now I'm getting more into the well-being side of it because and business side of it, obviously along the way. And just because I think that's where it's going.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And I think that your journey, I mean, it's very interesting because most of the trainers that I've met end up at a place like Lifetime Fitness. They do what you kind of said, right? They go in, they get some clients, they go, okay, I'm out of here. And then they go open their own place. And either they flounder because they realize it's a huge challenge going out. It's not easy getting clients on your own, or they figure it out and open their own spot. I don't know too many people that have gone through the entire business ranks of starting off from cleaning weights at one place all the way up to be a vice president, per se, of one company and then back to Lifetime Fitness. I'm just wondering, I mean, that entire journey for you, was it planned? Like, did you have a plan of I'm working my way up to this business spot?
Well, when I got to Lifetime, honestly, what happened was, I saw these beautiful facilities. I got in at the right time. There was maybe 25 clubs nationally, and most of them were in Minnesota at that time. So I came in at the right time. So, right at the same time as I was thinking of what my grand plan was of opening my own business, Lifetime just started to explode, especially in Illinois, which I was where I came in at the third club. I think there's 12 now. And so when I became, they said, well, I want you to become a manager. And I'm like, well, I don't know what the hell that is. I'm a good trainer and I'm pretty educated. And they said, no, we want you there. And so I took that role. And that's when I really started getting into, maybe slightly before, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and Stephen Covey's work and John Maxwell's work. So I really kind of diverted a little bit of my time away from the technical stuff that we all love and get into the industry for, and got into the personal development, the Tony Robbins stuff and leadership stuff, and just really enjoyed it. And I sucked as a manager. I mean, I still remember a girl named Monique Casper, when I became actually the PT manager, and she just ripped me a new, she read an email to me personally. And I was like, oh my God, if this is true, like I need to quit today, And so what I did was I'm a transparent guy, and I didn't call her out, but in a meeting with all of my staff, there was like 35 people. I basically read this email and I said, hey, if any of this is true, then I probably need a new job. I said, because, I give my heart and soul. And really at my time, it was always, I'm going to educate you better than anybody else. I mean, at one point we hosted the first satellite MAT internship at our facility. We had 5 MAT therapists. They were called back then, obviously different now. So we had a staff, man, and it was rocking. But, my administration, how do I deal with people? Like, all of those things just sucked. And so I basically told the staff, I said, I'm going to leave the room. I said, I need you guys to get together and figure out how much of this is true and how much of it isn't. And if a lot of it is, then, I'll hang him up and I'll just start training. And sure enough, they said, no, we really appreciate the things you're doing here. Yeah, you could use some work here. And then I dove into those things and I got, as proficient as I possibly could in those other things, and kind of moved up, then became an area manager and crushed it through about 4 or 5 states. And at the end of the day, I knew that I wanted to grow with the company. And so I found that path, moved to Minnesota. That was a struggle a bit because it was during the 2008 not pandemic, but 2008 crash, and some stuff happened there. And then ironically, and this is what is just life, man, is that within weeks, probably months of me getting my dream job, which was director of education and director of Alpha training, I get a phone call from a guy named Richard Boyd. And I don't know if you're familiar with who he is, but Richard started personal training on the net, which was one of the first big, like, web-based education platforms for trainers. And then he sold that and started PTA Global, which was recently got bought by
Yes.
NASM. So he was the guy who collaborated all those people together, and it was his idea. And he said, I'm going to start working for 24. He goes, come over, you can head up 24. And I literally was in California with the founder of Lifetime. We were doing a photo shoot, and I was in his jet, and he flew me to California, and I
Dude.
literally took the phone call staring at the Hollywood sign, during this photo shoot. And I'm like, dude, like, I love California. And there's some things that happened with my dad. My dad was a musician, and he never went to California. And the album that the band created and finished when they went to California ended up winning a Grammy Award.
Dude,
So
sick.
there were some things that, like, just I gotta give it a shot. Let me see what happens. I end up getting the role, and it didn't work out. And they basically bled me for information. And then within a couple of days of my first equity coming into play, they let me go over a Facebook post. So
Oh.
so it was interesting. And not all companies are created equally. Let's just say that.
Now I would love to talk about where you're at for sure in a minute, but I'm
Yeah.
interested. You said right because there's a huge transition you went from there. You went from being a personal trainer, helping people doing fitness and all that stuff, and then you progressed to a manager role and
Mhm.
dealing with people. And you said you got this email that was kind of pivotal for you. I'm wondering if you could divulge what they said in that email to you and what changed for you. Because Gary Vee, I mean, I'm not one. He's got some really cool clips out there, but he posted one like, "Hey, if you want to go from $1 million company to $100 million company, it's not about learning more skills. It's about investing and learning how to deal with people." And so
Yeah.
you mentioned that. So I'm wondering, is that a part of it?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. That was a pivotal point in my career. And if I'm going to stay down this management role and corporate ladder kind of thing, then I better figure out how to work with people. And it's still, it's a strength, but I know that after everything that I've been through, I'm better kind of by myself a little bit more in a small team. It's just, my passion, what I had a hard time doing is obviously in clubs, you get a pretty wide range of trainers, of people that are fairly new to some that are great. And a lot of times the ones that are great, sometimes they leave, and they find other things, especially during the pandemic and everything that's going on right now. As I say, it's a perfect storm for people to take off. And what happened was I just knew I need to better myself. And what I love about the personal development stuff and leadership stuff is it helps you inside as well as outside your life. I mean, inside work and outside of work. And it just, I dove head and foot, toe, everything, whatever. I'm kind of like Biff sometimes, and I mess up quotes from Back to the Future too. But I really went into it, and I've done a lot of personal development between Covey's stuff and courses. I attended the first virtual Anthony Robbins course just recently. A guy named Bo Eason, who has got basically, ironically, when I left 24, I found him at the Idea Summit that I went to, and he was the keynote. And I ended up going through his personal story power 3-day course, and then went to I went into way above my means. I went into his mastermind program. I just couldn't afford it, and I had to drop out.
So I'm wondering, with all of that, the personal development and leadership mastery. I mean, John Maxwell, huge fan of his work. There's some
Mhm.
incredible stuff there. I find personal training in fitness pro land very interesting because it's a very low admission world. You can take a certification, enter in, and get a job that's paying a little bit more than minimum wage, helping people with incredible results. And then for you to scale it and for you to have a career in this, the skills that are required are really, really outside of what's traditionally taught in personal training world. I mean, you have to learn communication skills, business acumen, technical skills, and so many things. And so I'm wondering, in your opinion, and as an educational director, how do you think fitness pros, or you've influenced fitness pros, should divide their time between technical mastery, personal professional development, business skills, and so forth?
Well, let me start by saying I remember my college campus, and I remember the sciences building and the business building were on opposite ends of the campus, right? And those two things don't come into play. So, but at the end of the day, everything is a business, like, and so many trainers, they just get so caught up in sales, and automatically associate it with a very, very negative experience of used car sales, or whatever the case may be, previous training people in business organizations, whatever. But at the end of the day, it's a business, so you've got to learn that. And really what happened was when I moved to Minnesota, And I was in charge of training and developing education for all the new hires and implementing that. For a while. I opened up the Canada, the one in the first one, which was Toronto. Why am I forgetting? Not Syosset, that's New York. Mississauga, I think,
Oh,
Mississauga Club. And I did the grand opening for that education. But what happens is I did that, and then I had to develop education for managers. So it was a certification that all managers would come to Minnesota to learn the skills and the business acumen and how do I work with people. So I was developing a lot of education, and I was living in a hotel in '08 in Minnesota while my family was back in Chicago because we couldn't sell our house. We were trying to figure that out, and I was traveling a ton. And I came across a book that was called Change Anything by Carrie Patterson and several others. And he's also the guy who wrote Crucial Confrontations and Crucial Conversations. But he's written many amazing books that I highly recommend. And in that book, he said massive change in pandemics or back then we were talking about stuff that happened kind of in third world countries and different things. And they said usually occurs by really focusing on a few what he called vital behaviors. And ironically, a lot of people know John Berardi. If you look in John Berardi's the PN stuff and things that they quote there's reference to that book, and the vital behaviors, critical behaviors is kind of what I've called it over time. And basically they said you have to find out what the best are doing that the not so good or the not good aren't doing.
right.
And so that's where I started a survey, and I surveyed 400 trainers, 200 of which were what I considered very, very successful. 5 years at least in the business. For the last year, has maintained at least 25 to 30 sessions a week. They've continued their education. If they sold a bunch and didn't train, I didn't interview that person. That was the best salesperson. I didn't want that. I mean, those skills are important, but I want the best well-rounded. And then I took that and I took all the commonalities. If 4 to 5 or more people said, yes, this is something that I did, I moved it to the side and put that into another survey. If it was less than that, I just threw it out. Then I took 200 trainers that were what I would consider unsuccessful, but were still with. It was Lifetime at the time. And so these were people that were barely writing or barely doing about 5 to 7 sessions a week. They were struggling, not making money, but they were still with us. And so I said, rate yourself. Well, 1, do you do any of these things? And 2, rate yourself on a 1 to 10 scale of how well you do it. And really it came down to, it was 7 things that I've now kind of condensed into 5 things that I call the 5 fundamentals of a fit pro. And at the end of the day, what I did, and at one point in time, is I went back into a club and I literally basically said, hey, listen, I'm not going to focus on anything else but these 5 things. And I found people that were really good at teaching those things or the things that I was good at, I would teach. If it was something else that I wasn't good at, I'd have them teach. And all we did was focused on every day between 1 and 3 o'clock, which is usually the dead times of the day in the clubs. We would have continuing education classes going on between 1 and 3 in each one of these segments. And if you were struggling, then you came to all of them. If you were, not quite where you wanted, and we identify that maybe it's just this one thing that you were really, not so good at, then you would come to that. And it literally blew up the club. I mean, we had a pretty good club to begin with, but the club was doing like $225,000 a month, ish. And it was dropping down to 165. In 3.5 months, we went from 165 to 280, 290 a month,
Just from the
just
education.
focusing on that. And we had in a year,
Wow.
it was about just under 2 years. We had 2 people leave the club. One was for promotion and one they moved out of the state. So literally turnover was 0, in that particular club. And honestly, I've been focusing on this and talking about this. I spoke at IDEA, it's just, to me, it's how to simplify things and how do I figure out really, how do I help people, succeed in this industry and learn from, the many mistakes I made throughout my life and the ones that I've seen other people make as well.
Love it, Jason. Now, are those changes that you had where you went from the 160 to 280? Is all of that from governed from those 5 principles and then focusing on those?
That's it. So what I've created, like if you follow John Maxwell's got many books, fantastic books. If you've never read them, read them. First one I would highly recommend is, Developing the Leader Within You. And then there's the second one is Developing the Leaders Around You. So I took that concept along with a bit of the Change Anything and along with a bit of the Covey stuff. Obviously, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is a first book you should probably read if you're just starting out, in my opinion. And really took those concepts. So I developed courses for trainers to identify, hey, how is it or what is it that I need to know to be successful? And then I tweaked that to develop managers to say, okay, these are the things as a manager you need to know that they need to be good at. And here's the skills and how you could help develop. How do I communicate? How do I build trust? How do I, understand that it's always about two things when it comes to other people. And I would argue even your clients, even if it's a one-on-one client, it comes back down to competency level and commitment level, plain and simple. Competency and commitment. And some people will have the competency, but they don't have the motivation. They don't have the commitment. And that's that person you're dealing with completely different than the person who is highly motivated and not competent. So and that's where as managers or even sometimes as trainers to clients, we get so frustrated because we don't understand why they're not committed, why they're not consistent, why they keep canceling. And at the end of the day, I always say it's because you suck at your sales skills. Because your sales skills, if you take the word sales out, is all about truly identifying the motivation that's behind what it is that they want to achieve.
100%.
And if you find out that motivation, you are armed with so much more ammunition, not in a bad way to use it against them, but to use it for them to be able to help them achieve their goals. So, and that comes from another Covey's son is another amazing book called Speed of Trust. And it's about understanding credibility. How does credibility and how do you define credibility and trust? And it starts credibility as a self-trust thing. If you don't trust yourself, then you're not going to trust anybody else.
Right.
And so self-trust comes into 2 buckets. There's a competency, right? And there's a commitment level. And, a character and a competency. Character and competency. Character is your intent and your integrity. And then the competency is, do you get results and do you have the capabilities? Yeah. So when you start to think about things in that way, and you're working with clients or you're working with other trainers that you're trying to develop, you have to understand and think through where is it in their developmental level. And developmental level is, in my opinion, always looking at competency and commitment. Right. And if their competency is high, but their commitment is low, why is it? Do they have outside stuff going on? Are they living out of their car? I mean, I could go on in stories. These are people that I've dealt with, working at Lifetime, living out of their car because they moved across the country and I didn't even know it. And that guy is one of the most successful trainers we've got in our company right now. So you have to look at it from that perspective. And some clients don't want competency, right? They just want you to tell them what to do.
Right.
And if that's the person, then that's the person. But now you got to reestablish what from a commitment side, how important things are and what are the levers that you can manipulate. And I don't mean manipulate them. I mean, what are the things that you can use to help them get consistent and stay, not only consistent, but persistent enough as well.
Well, it's funny you said the sales thing because that kind of grinds my gears. And I mean, openly, when I first started off as a trainer and I was working in a large facility, I was the head trainer of a spot with 25 trainers. The word sales was a nasty word amongst the staff because we did have the sales staff and then we had the trainers. But it's funny because, I mean, as you said, selling is really about identifying someone's emotional needs around why they're coming in for the place. It's that whole Jordan Belfort, sell me this pen. Well, it's not really about the pen. It's really about, does this pen serve the needs for this person? And if you can make it fit their needs, you're great. But I think there's kind of a couple things with that is like, are you able to have that conversation every single session to identify where someone's emotional needs are with what you're doing? Are you doing a great job of delivering, hey, we're doing a squat, and the squat's going to serve you by X, Y, and Z, which means you're going to get more out of your life? And then are you setting up the opportunity for conversations, like reassessments or whatever it may be, to reestablish that? Because so many trainers, and I made this mistake as well, is you get someone in, they're a placeholder, and they, you choke the placeholder puppy. They're in your schedule. They just keep coming in. You're like, all right, I got Jordan twice a week. He'll just keep coming. It's all right. Next, please. And then what happens? You didn't continue selling. You didn't have the conversation. And then they leave because it just became too friendly, and it was never really going somewhere after a certain point. So, I mean, in your opinion, how does selling become, in the general scheme, in a larger place where you're overseeing many, many, many trainers, how does selling become genuine, helpful thing rather than this pushy, negative, dark cloud?
Yeah, and you have to find your way. I mean, in my opinion, we've talked about this offline, but the book that I came across, I trusted Franklin Covey and the Covey Institute. Whatever they had, I thought was fantastic and had integrity. One of the only sales books that they have in their stores or on their site is a book called Let's Get Real or Let's Not Play by a guy named Mayhen Kulsa. And it's about relationship-based sales. And how do I create relationships? And how do I structure a conversation? And how do I basically earn the right to, before I give them a solution? Because at the end of the day, a lot of people think the sale is the hardest part. It's not. The hardest part is getting them to their goals after you sold them, right? After they purchased, right? So there's so many different things. So how I found a way, I wasn't a floor walker, in the clubs. That's one of the things that's one of the benefits. The biggest benefit of the club, of a nice club, is you've got a nice demographic and you're never going to run out of people. So what is that worth, right? At the end of the day. But I hated walking the floor, but I loved educating. So all I did, I found two niches back, when I was full-time trainer. One was golf. The other one was core training. Now I do booty training or whatever's, that's the hot thing right now. But at the end of the day, my two niches were core and golf. And I didn't deal with as much cosmetic. That just wasn't my thing. I like dealing with a little bit of sport, but more the rehab side of it and performance side of it. And I did seminars. And then in that seminar, I would give them a great amount of information. I'd pull them into the experience, doing a couple of things that wowed them from a flexibility. I mean, now I've got MAT, that I could pull from, and there's some cool stuff there. I have some muscle energy techniques that I know that are great, that really open up range of motion. If you open up range of motion for a golfer, they're going to go, yeah, just pay me whatever. And it's a demographic that has got the money. So, and they're a bit loony to get better. And so at the end of the day, I did that. And then I just had my 4 packages and priced them at different rates per, which one you want to do. And then the other thing I did was I gave away my assessment. And I know a lot of people will argue that, but I created an assessment that basically looked at every one of the areas of their body. And back then I used a goniometer. It's not the 100% best. We can bash it. I'm not getting into that. But at the end of the day, I had literally from their neck all the way down to their ankles. There was a test that I did. I said, here's normal range. Here's your range. And here's how this fault can impact the game of golf. If you're taking your eyes off the ball, it might not be because you're not concentrating. It could be because your neck's so tight that when you swing, your neck musculature is pulling your head off the line. So if you're laterally swaying, your hips are immobile. So there were all these things and they blew them away, but I just didn't give them the solution. So I gave that to them. And that, if they didn't bite on the seminar and the things that I did there, almost always they bought at least a 4 to 5 pack to just get them through. How do I correct these imbalances? Right. And so that's how I did it until I got, good at the let's get real stuff. And, there's a specific structure of a conversation that he talks about. And when you understand that, and then you learn the skills within that structure, it's super powerful. And, ironically, about 6 months ago, my first client that I ever used that system on, which was, oh, by the way, the biggest, most committed that I ever had of a client. It was a 6-month, paid monthly 3 times a week client. So, and that this guy came back and reached out to me literally just about 6 months ago, and I haven't talked to him in a while. This was 15, 16 years ago. And he literally just, we became friends still again and talking about how we do. And he's a very successful business guy who kind of helps me and mentors me there as well.
So, Jason, I want to kind of shift gears here because everything you're saying is absolutely gold. But there's something that's just kind of grinding my gears that I think we got to
Yeah.
dive into a bit here.
Yeah.
You're the enemy. No, but what I mean, and joking aside, is that a lot of these trainers that I've known for the years, because I mean, I've been flying all over, taught a lot of great places all over Canada, and a lot of trainers raise an eyebrow and kind of snarl a little bit when they think about working in a commercial facility because they believe that, and I should say that from general experience, the opportunity for career growth as a personal trainer, as a fitness pro, really isn't there. And we spoke online about this, that most people, they go into a facility, they hit their cap as a trainer, and then when they get good at communicating, the large company will have them swing over to sales, and then there's a greater opportunity for exponential growth. So I was just wondering, I mean, if you could speak to your wisdom and opinion on like the schism between being an independent entrepreneurial trainer versus being a trainer in a commercial facility, and how do you think about those two things?
Yeah. Again, they're totally different, and the skill sets are totally different. And so let me start by saying nobody, whether you have your own business or not, gets paid the full amount of their session.
Right.
Okay. Let's just start there, because if you own your own studio, or if you're renting space within the studio, or you're buying equipment for your garage, like however you want to play it, there's money that's going in, which means that you got to, if you're paying yourself when you get paid, you got to take a bit of that out. Then you got benefits. So again, not every big organization is created equally. You know, I saw 4 different big organizations throughout my career. And by far, nobody can touch Lifetime because of the infrastructure that they have. You know, at the highest amount, they're paying out about 60, depending upon some things, maybe a little bit more than 60%. So they're taking, let's call it 40%. At the highest. At the lowest, I think they're taking about 50, 52%, somewhere in that range. But you're getting benefits paid, which again, in the States, it's a pretty big cost. There's paid time off, which means when you don't have a client, you can still get paid. Yeah. There's 401k and they match it. You know, there's, you know, when we were public, we're not public anymore, there was employee stock options. So when you think about retirement, that was kind of it still is my passion. It's, you know, how can we create this to be a profession people can retire from?
Yeah.
And so in looking at all of those things lead up to a fee, right? You know, if you own your own facility, if you're paying $1,000 of rent, whatever. So let's not look at you make everything when you're on your own. You don't. Okay. And plus you got the mileage that you're putting on your car, the gas that you're paying more because you're driving around, you know. So we can start there. So there's those things. And I'm not saying that the club is the end all be all either, but the nice thing about the club, especially Lifetime, and that's where I'm going to speak to, is the amount of organizational infrastructure within the fitness division without having to go to membership, without having to become a general manager. I've always said, I don't want to deal with poop in the pool. Like, that's what I always said. Like, that's not what I want to deal with. So I stayed in fitness, and they allowed, you know, great compensation to be able to do that once you get through and you show your proficiencies. And so, you know, at the end of the day, I wanted to start by leveling the field and talking about that first and foremost. So now, as at Lifetime, there's assistant managers, ones that focus just on education and ones that focus a little bit more on the sales. So depending upon your skill set and what you're good at, you know, the highly educated is not necessarily mean that they can teach this stuff down. So that's also a big gap. So learning how to teach people and benefiting from the trainers underneath you that you're developing, that's an opportunity. Then there's the PT manager position. You know, there's a group training position. Now we have virtual, where literally we're hiring virtual trainers. You don't have to even step foot in our club. You get our it's a souped up Trainerize. So Trainerize is who we private label, but it's all of our stuff that's built into it, all of our IP on how to actually help trainers, you know,
Cool.
develop an online presence and coach online and build your programs. And it's almost like a online trainer academy. Goodman, it's kind of like that, nowhere near that. That's really good stuff. But it's kind of like that. So there's a lot of different opportunities. And then there's regional management, and then there's the corporate office that's got a huge infrastructure. And really at 24, the one thing that really caused me to start beefing with a lot of the other executives and operations guys was because they didn't want me to create an infrastructure within fitness that would support fitness. They're like, oh, we don't want a silo of fitness. I'm like, they're not going to report into me. They'll report into you. I'm going to be just there feeding you guys and feeding them on what should be happening.
Right.
And I remember it like it was yesterday. The guy said not at Costco, at Home Depot, they don't have a division of lumber from the guy at lumber all the way up to the corporate office. And I said, well, does the lumber guy teach the guy who builds the house how to build the house? I said, because you're not talking about apples to apples here, right? And if you want your general managers teaching trainers how to actually do an assessment or teaching trainers how to do group training, first and foremost, no, the trainers are going to say, get out of here, especially if they were never a trainer. And so they gave, for the same compensation model, it was about $500,000. I was going to have 36 district fitness managers that were going to support, half personal training manager, half district manager for fitness to support. I mean, we had one guy's region was Southern Cal, like from Orange County down to San Diego to Vegas to Hawaii. What the hell is that guy going to do with 75 clubs? I mean, I take that region and travel. I mean, it's fantastic. But at the end of the day, instead he's like, no, I'm going to give you 5 guys. So we paid 5 guys $100,000, and God bless, all of them were fantastic people, but they didn't get anything done because there was 80 to 100 clubs a piece. That's bigger than any other organization had, 99% of the organizations that were out there. So again, not to go off on a tangent, as you feel that's a hot button for me, but they're not all created equally, And so it depends on what you want to do. If you love huffing the sessions out and training 25, 30, 40 sessions a week and having to maintain that to make the money that you want to make, then, on your own or in a club, being a trainer is it. But what's nice and what I loved is I love to get my fix of training a few sessions, 5 to 10 sessions a week, but also be a manager where I'm getting some stable income, collecting a retirement, doing those types of things that can help you, again, retire as a health and fitness professional.
I love it, man. And I love your fire, man. I totally get it. I couldn't imagine. I mean, I think when you enter to specific scales, it's not that you enter into these new world of problems where you have a specific amount of money, you've got a specific amount of clubs, and you've got to try to have a high quality standard. I mean, I would love to battle those challenges, but I just couldn't imagine how you would have to juggle it.
Yeah.
Now, on that note, like let's just role play for a second. So, your neighbor's kid shows up, they're 23 years old, and they say, "Hey, Jason, listen, I want to make $100,000 a year working as a personal trainer. What do you think I should do?" With the years of experience and the wisdom you have, how would you suggest someone who's starting out end up to that 6-figure spot?
First and foremost, find a mentor. Plain and simple. I would not be where I'm at without a guy named Tony Bruno. Tony Bruno is the guy who introduced me to Tom Purvis, NASM, MAT, Paul Check. If it wasn't for him, I maybe would have stumbled upon those people, but at the end of the day, that was it. So I think first and foremost, find the mentor and find the mentor in the technical element, because obviously if you're going to be a trainer, you have to learn the technical element, but then you got to go find somebody that's going to teach you the business side of it. Maybe the same person, but may not be, and you can't steer away from it. So first and foremost, that. And what's nice about a lot of the big organizations is that they help you develop those skill sets if you come in with an open mind. So, I think most people will say, go at some point in your career, you got to go and find out if the club environment is for you or not. And it's okay if it isn't. And again, not all are created equally, but you got to do your homework. You should be doing the interviewing as much as they're interviewing you. I've got a 3, I could share it with you. I'll send it afterward, but I wrote 3 articles for Club Solutions magazine many years ago called the exercise trainer, the certified trainer, and the health and fitness professional, and kind of in a joking, fun, jovial manner. It was around when CrossFit really boomed at the time too. So you'll get some CrossFit knocks in there subtly, but but at the end of the day, it just talks about the guy, basically the person who comes in and just says, "Hey, I worked out my whole life. Let's do this." Got the easiest cert, went out and let's go do it. I mean, I think there's a direct correlation, maybe not as much now with social media. If you understand social media, you could probably make $100,000 very easily.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a direct correlation between the amount of money that I spent on continuing education smartly and how much money I make at the end of the day. So if you're not willing to, and that could be, I'm going to go all in on social media. Yeah, you can get to that number. Or, I probably spent after college, I don't know, 70 to 100 grand over my years going through other education.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Me too, man. Me too. No, I can
Yeah.
definitely relate to that. And I think that, I mean, that's part of the reason why we started the Fitness Pro Mentors thing is that
Yeah.
in our world, I mean, as you know, within the Tom Purvis RTS influenced world, there's some really brilliant technicians, but there seemed to be this lack, this hole with how do I take all of this biomechanical knowledge and have the business acumen and the communication processes and sales even to know how to even move about having a personal training business. Everyone can be great technicians. And I make this joke that if you've spent more time studying how to do a squat than you have done business, we got a big problem. And I hate saying that jokingly, that's a real thing.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is too, and I love all the educators. I think it's probably a little better now. Either that or I'm out of it a little bit. It's a little better now than it was. But back in the, when we were learning early on in the night, like middle 90s, 2000s, it was like you were following this guy and you hated that guy, and that guy was full of shit. And that guy, and it was my guru can beat up your guru is what I kind of, and it's kind of there, but it's not quite. And what I saw, I mean, at one point in time, we hosted the internship, at this Burr Ridge, Illinois location. We had 5 or 6 therapists, we called them back then, but 3 of them were so inundated with the knowledge that they've got and some of the crazy things that come from learning and applying that skill, that they alienated the hell out of themselves with the staff. Because I looked at them, I said, listen, you should be so grateful that you had the time and money to be able to go through that cert. Because back then it was, I don't know, about 8 grand, 9 grand, or no, I think it was 10 grand on if you went to Colorado, it was like 7,500, but plus travel. And I said, and some of these people just have NESM. That's what they have right now. That's where they're at right now. And you're sitting there bashing the hell out of them, telling them they're stupid and they shouldn't be stretching and they shouldn't be doing all this stuff. Instead, feed them a little bit of information so that they start to learn that what they don't know, and they get inquiry. And the next thing you know, they're giving you their client to give back to them. Like, it was just so mind boggling that they did this, and it was so common. And so it's like, you got to learn how to work with people. You got to learn the business side. You can't alienate yourself, because as much as I love MAT and think it's probably one of the best things it is the best thing I've ever done and gets the results the fastest when done right. It's not the only thing. There's other people using completely different things that they don't agree with that still get results with their people. Otherwise they wouldn't be as successful, in getting the results and people raving about them. So it's just like, have some perspective.
And honestly, I couldn't agree more. And very quickly, Mr. Brad Thorpe is saying, what a magical talk. Thank God.
Thank you, sir.
So, I mean, you said one thing there, and I think this will be a great last conversation topic, is you're saying, hey, it's a lot about people and sharing. And there's one thing that I learned from Tom that resonates with me, which is one of the reasons how I go about doing this podcast and doing this business, is it's really about people and sharing information and sharing perspective. And you don't necessarily need to agree with each person, but instead of carrying a flag and saying this person's bad, this person's good, look at the suit of clothing that they're wearing and say, okay, what can I learn from this? How can I take the anatomy and physics of it, take the pieces that work, learn about it rationally, empirically, and move forward? but you have to talk to people. You have to deal with people. And so this turns into why I'm doing this show and even talking to you, because you and I have a very similar podcast style show where we interview professionals at high levels, right? Lifetime Talks training. I absolutely love it. But you're all about relationships as you talk to all of these different high level professionals, ask them questions, dig into their business, their technical skills, and you try to bring it to Lifetime and the people behind the scenes. So I was just wondering if you could speak a little bit to your show and
Yeah,
really the
absolutely.
goal of it. And yeah, I'm really excited what you do. You just
Appreciate it.
think it's amazing. I think it's super inspirational.
Thank you. You know, at the end of the day, the show is threefold. It started right during the pandemic, or just when people started to come back. I think actually my first episode launched this week, when it was just on YouTube. With John Goodman was our first episode,
Nice.
and it really came. I said, all right. At that time, Lifetime it went from 5,400 trainers nationally to 2,000 when we came back. And we furloughed them. So we furloughed. Well, what happened, without going on that tangent, is we furloughed them. It allowed them to get their benefits paid. It allowed them to go train at the studio down the block getting paid cash, and they all walked with a bunch of clients. It is what it is. It was the perfect storm for them to get paid. And then they were collecting unemployment on top of that. So I had said, and then I was seeing managers and regional managers going, hey, if you got a book of business, come to Lifetime and bring your people. Like, I'm like, who's going to do that? Like, if I got 30 clients at my studio, I'm not going to, hey, to Lifetime, take 40. Here you go. And I'm like, it's dumb. Like, what do they value? What do trainers value? And they value time and they value education. And so I had said, we need to build the brand back, and so that people know that we've got relationships with the people that we do the podcast with. And I always stayed connected to the industry as much as I stayed super connected into Lifetime. And that's been a blessing for me, and probably what allows me to keep my job, to be honest with you, because I'm connected into the industry. And so one of the things was, hey, if you're going to come on the show, we got to have the best discount than any other organization. Otherwise, I'm not going to put you on the show. So one of the pluses is anybody that you see that we have on our show, we've got discounts to go through, whether it's all of their education or parts of their education, at a special rate. So I looked at it from a recruiting and a brand development. Can we change the perception of the big club and what it's like to work at the big club by associating and having better education and bringing some people in to say, oh, well, I didn't realize that. So now I call it the 40% equation. Why is somebody going to give up 40%? Well, if they can get free continuing education, that's less money that they're paying out. If they can have more time and be not as rigid as we once were, which we're starting to be, that would help people. So at the end of the day, that was really where the podcast stemmed from. A lot of people thought it was about me getting my name. I mean, that's a plus. That's not the reason. It was educating our own trainers. It's actually not as much about educating our own trainers. I mean, that's a plus, but the two biggest reasons were brand and recruiting. And, we've had, in all facets. So we have a live, train, eat category, and then an internal category. Live is sleep and mental health and behavior modification and all the things that are more a bit well-being, living kind of that kind of stuff, health, happiness kind of things. Then obviously train is everything training, eat is everything eating, supplementation. And then we highlight our top trainers that have great stories, not the people who sell the most, but the people who have impacted clients, members in a positive way, and we push them up. So with our digital people, we'll push their digital stuff out so it gets hopefully their digital business up, bigger as well. So, those really have been the main drivers to, why I did it and why it's an absolute blast.
I love it, man. Honestly, and we talk to our students a lot about the idea of podcasting and live streaming like we're doing now, because having that expert status, putting your name out there, but interviewing local guests depending on your business or international guests like yourself really helps to elevate your authority and get seen by more people. And so, I mean, you've done a brilliant job of absolutely raising the Jason Stella name, but at the same time, you're bringing these John Goodmans on and all these other people who you're elevating them, and together you're growing together, which is absolutely fantastic.
Yep.
I got one last question. I was just thinking, because through our conversation, it's become clear that you're well educated, you're self educated, you spend a lot of time studying and learning about personal professional development. For the trainers that are listening to this now in the future, if you were to recommend one book for them to read of all the books you mentioned today, what would be the number one book that everyone should read and they're crazy not to?
I don't know if I can narrow it to one, man.
What do you got? What do you got? Let's go.
If I did have to go one, I would probably go with 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. It's just well rounded, but it depends on where you're at, right? If you want to become a manager and you want to get into leadership, I think the single best book is going to be Leading at a Higher Level by Ken Blanchard. It's simple, systematized, and it's fantastic. But the industry has changed so much. I always say we started out as bodybuilders when I first started. Then we started getting into corrective exercise, and then we started getting more into nutrition. Now it's behavior modification. At the end of the day, if you can't help somebody change their behavior, it doesn't matter how good your workout is because they're not going to do it. So, I think that, and then obviously the industry, in my opinion, the most successful are going to be the ones that are focusing on overall well-being. And that's having people live comfortable, healthy, and happy. And that means that understanding emotional health and mindfulness and things like my favorite and free, it's all free. Listen to the Byron Katie episode that I had. She's been on Oprah's show. I mean, she's the biggest guest that nobody knows about, but she's the biggest guest I absolutely had on the podcast. And all of her stuff is free. She's got something called The Work. And then another one is that influenced me, because I say books are only good if they impact you at the moment in time that you're in. I can't tell you how many books I've read, put them away, came back 5 years later and go, oh my God, why did I wait this long?
Yeah.
It was just where I'm at. And the book that hit me the hardest was a book called Start Here, Mastering the Lifelong Art of Well-Being. Again, I had the author on in the podcast. His name is Nate Klemp. And he talks all about this Life XT program that he's built around helping somebody improve their well-being. Again, health, comfortable, healthy, and happy. And especially with what's happening in the world right now, if you can help that, you're going to be priceless. I mean, you're going to be able to charge whatever you want.
Jason, I mean, I got to say, thank you so much for your wisdom and time. I mean, you've been all over the fitness industry in many places, and you're in an incredible spot. You are consistently helping your organization, but at the same time, offering free value to help educate others so they can continue to develop themselves and become better humans, but at the same time, better trainers. Man, thank you so much for your time, for being on the show. I'm excited to be on yours. And
yes, absolutely.
It's going to be a lot of fun, man. But thank you so
for
much,
sure.
man. And
yeah, follow the show if you're out there. Follow the show, or my Instagram, the main one I use. I've got a personal one that's not as big, but the other one's still not the best. But it's at Path to Personal Excellence is the tag. That's the one I kind of post the most stuff on.
And you got to check out Lifetime Talks Training. Jason has ridiculously high-level guests on all the time. And if you haven't heard of it, it is the best fitness pro podcast show that you have not heard of. Go check it out. Go subscribe. Jason, man, thank you so much for your time, and I really appreciate it. And we're going to have you on again because we got a lot more to talk about.
Yeah, for sure. Would love to. Thanks, man. Thanks, everybody.